Welcome to Collecting with Confidence, Art Investment Essentials, the Wellspire Advisors video series designed to help art collectors and investors navigate the complexities of art collecting and investment. In this video series, we'll break down key topics like art valuation, estate planning, and market dynamics with expert guests. And now, here's your host, Oliver Pursche.
Welcome back, everyone, to Collecting with Confidence, the Wellspire series of video blogs geared for and created for investors as well as collectors of arts and collectibles. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Steve Pincus, Senior Managing Director at Risk Strategies, one of the premier insurers of fine art and other collectibles. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the nuances of insuring your collection, whether it's new, whether it's very, very large or smaller, and some of the pitfalls that he's experienced over his career in the insurance world. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Oliver. Appreciate being here.
So why don't you start off by introducing yourself a little bit, how you work with individuals, what your background is, and then we can delve into some of the meat of the subject.
Well, thank you. Just one point that I wanted to clarify. So we operate as insurance brokers. We represent clients and arrange insurance on behalf of clients with insurers. So we are not insurers. We are risk advisors and brokers, which I've been doing in this particular field for about 45 years. Hard to believe that that's where I am. So I've seen a lot, done a lot in this particular space, and have really seen the art world grow up and the collecting world grow up around us. So, and as values grow, as individual collections grow, and as well as breadth of things, it's been interesting to kind of keep up with and help advise folks along the way. So part of our strategies company, we have a broad team that specializes in this area along with me and works individually with clients on a day-to-day basis. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what we do.
That's great. Thank you. Well, look, I mean, everybody has insurance. I have insurance. You have insurance. But how do you know that you have the right coverage? If you're underinsured, if you're overinsured, what are some of the considerations and things that you've experienced over the course of your career with collectors as time passes on?
Well, it's I'll answer the question this way. And we have seen fairly substantial collections without any insurance because of the misnomer that if I have insurance, the IRS is going to find out, right? And so I don't want to pay tax or whatever kind of strange notions people may have. Well, and that's absolutely not true. But how do you know whether you have the right insurance or not? It's a great question. So work with a professional that can look at your current insurance structure and advise you based on what your actual exposures are. Is there an alignment with your exposure versus what insurance you have? Is it the right carrier? Is it the right type of coverage? Is it blanket versus individual item coverage? Is it the right basis evaluation? What will I collect in the event of a loss? So there's a lot of different things to look at when one is evaluating whether or not that individual is properly protected.
So when you work with, let's say, a family that has a diverse collection, so, they may own some fine art, some sculptures, they may own a collection of wines that is rare, as well as some jewelry that is, let's just say, something that you're not wearing on your wrist or around your neck on a daily basis that has some more value to it. Does that require different approaches for each kind of, let's say, sub-asset class of the collectibles, or can it be done in a blanket policy? When do you kind of draw the line and where do you draw it?
I think you do draw the line, right? So a fine art collection is different than a collection of vintage cars. There are different aspects to them. In principle, they're the same, right? And again, the main thing you want to make sure is the insurer that I have insuring these things, what is going to happen in the event that I have a loss, and how is that loss going to be settled on my behalf? Do they understand that the originality of my 1958 Ferrari is what gives it its value, right? And a restoration may actually depreciate the value of that particular car, right? And so you want to know that going in. You don't want to find that out after your mechanic accidentally dropped the car off of a lift, and now there's a whole host of different issues and problems to address.
Yeah.
What was the condition of the car prior to that happening? So record keeping is really important. On the fine art side, condition reporting, appraisals, super important, and not just done once and forget about it, but continually doing it as time goes on, because you want the best record keeping you can have, because in the event of a loss, the insured has to prove their claim to the insurance company. And so record keeping is extremely important. We can help advise clients on how that should be done.
Yeah, I mean, in a previous episode of Collecting with Confidence, we talked about the three different values of art. So, you have your collection, and there's the market value, right? There's the fair market value, and then there's the insurance value. And, we've talked about updating them on an annual basis because things are in flux. But you and I spoke when we first met, we talked about something slightly different, which is how insurance, could change, or the need for the type of insurance can change when you, for instance, put the art in an LLC or in a trust, and there's fractional ownership for a variety of different owners, right? Mom and dad own this really expensive piece. There's 4 kids, all 4 of them want it, so now all 4 own 25%. Obviously, we're not cutting the, Picasso into 4 pieces and giving each a quarter.
Right. Let's just step back 1 second. What an individual wants to have, irrespective of fair market value, current market value, insurance value, I don't know really what that means. You want to have an agreed value with the insurance company, an agreed value. That is a specific value per that item as agreed to in the contract of insurance. That's what you want to have. That is the most finite, definitive thing you can have. How do you get them to agree to that value? An appraisal, a purchase invoice, something that they have that's tangible, that they would agree to at the outset of the insurance contract. That agreed value can change over time. Again, updated appraisals. As far as the ownership interests, those are things that we would discuss with a client, with a wealth advisor, with a trust and estate attorney, to understand the named insured under the policy and what that would be. And then, those entities would be included. Again, in the event of a loss, the loss check would be in those various names, so there's no issues.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced with a client where, to your point, there was a declared value, but not necessarily an agreed upon value with the insurance company. And unfortunately, there was a partial claim, or, there was some damage. So, that it wasn't a lost piece, and a claim was made, and it was quite a fight to get somewhere close to what was expected by the client. Didn't get 100%. And so, yeah, that's a very good point. And I'd certainly encourage people to sit down, and if you're not working, with Steve or a professional like that, that you at the very least sit down and say, hey, wait a minute, I said that this diamond is worth $72,000. What does, pick your insurance carrier's name, think? And if I put in a claim, am I gonna get 36,000 as opposed to 72, right? That's a big, big difference. The other thing that I've experienced, and I'd love to get your take on, Stephen, is, the art world is an asset class, and we as wealth advisors, it's part of the balance sheet, and so we incorporate it into the entire mix when we look at a client's balance sheet and income statement. Its values change as with anything else, right? Things come into favor, things come out of favor. You know, using myself as an example, my parents, in particular, my father was always a big collector of fine Oriental rugs. You know, 30 years ago, those were hot items. Today, that's just not the taste of what people want anymore, right? I mean, they're used at concert halls to stomp on, as opposed to a fine piece that you might want to take real good care of in your living room. How does that play into, you know, insurance? And what I mean specifically is you have an agreed upon value, let's say for $1 million, right, on something, and you don't get a new appraisal. You have the agreed upon value with the insurance company. And 3 years later, there's a claim, and the insurance company says, and does this happen? I don't know. It says, well, wait a minute there, Oliver. I know it was worth $1 million, but we believe that the market has shifted and it's only worth $700,000 today. Talk us through that a little bit and how you can help mitigate some of those risks.
Okay. So again, you know, the key point is at the point, well, there's a couple of points. Number one, if you're insuring at the higher agreed value, you're going to pay premium on that higher amount. And if the market is in fact changed, and it's changed for Oriental rugs, it's changed for photography. All right. Unfortunately, you've seen a lot of photography lose a lot of its value over the years. Whether it'll come back again is another issue. I think it will, because some great photography inherently is still very good and will find its place in the market again. But you're right, the market does fluctuate. The insurance carrier at renewal that's the time that they can say to you, look, you know, we understand that the value of Oriental rugs has dropped. We want you to get a reappraisal on this because we don't think that the value for which we've agreed to insure it for is correct, and it may be too high. Now, if they don't do that, and you still have that contract that says it's an agreed value at $1 million and there's a loss, that's how that claim is going to be settled. So that's, you know, so the insurance carrier has an obligation to themselves too to understand what they're insuring, and if they don't, then the contract is in full force and effect at that higher amount.
And does that apply to blanket policies as well, or only when you have kind of the specific? Because I know, you know, in our home, we have a blanket insurance policy and things like the engagement ring and a couple of watches and all that. And there's a declared value there, right? Like it's worth this, it's worth that, but it is a blanket policy.
Blanket policies they're tricky, right? They're easier for a client to say, yeah, just give me a blanket amount of $5 million and I'll list all my stuff. It may come up to 12 million if you add it all up, but I'm going to bet that I'm not going to have a loss on everything at the same time. So I'll take a blanket policy. Typically, you insure at a lower value than the aggregation of all the things that are covered under that policy. Okay, that's fine. Now you have to look at what am I going to collect in the event of a loss section of the policy called the basis evaluation. And what does that say I'm going to get? So is it, again, the stated value on each individual item, which is agreed to? That's what you want. If it may say it's going to cover pay on actual cash value basis, it may say that'll cover on current market value at time of loss. So on any policy, you've got to look at whether it's a schedule policy with an amount set opposite each item, agreed, or a blanket policy. And then again, you've got to really look at that basis evaluation to see what was arranged for you with the insurance company. And that's
like anything else. It sounds like anything else in life, it's about the fine print.
Oh, the devil is in the details.
Indeed. So let me ask you this. You know, I mean, a total loss is relatively rare when it comes to art and collectibles, thankfully.
Thank you.
Partial losses are much more common, right? We discussed about the maid accidentally knocking into something, and all of a sudden, there's a scratch, or even the hole in the painting, or a crack in the vase, or pick a thing, right? Um, I mean, to your point earlier about the 1958 Ferrari that was dropped, and I just so uncomfortable with even saying that phrase as a car guy. But, insurance companies are obviously looking out for themselves, right? Yes, we're the end customer, but there's a reason why Warren Buffett always loved the insurance business and why it's so profitable, because they're really good at, kind of picking things apart. And I would imagine, especially when there's a partial loss, and you can say, well, hold on a second here, it was hanging on your wall, we can have it restored, and it's going to look exactly the same as it ever did. But there's more.
But it's not going to be exactly the same, right? This is why it's so important in this genre of collecting, and you can go as broad as you want, to be with a specialty underwriter who understands that as an insurer, your viewpoint on life is, I don't want an insurance claim. I want these objects. I'm a collector, and I collect because I'm passionate about a Ferrari, or a sculpture, or a painting, or a photograph, right? Or original lithographs, whatever it may be. Okay. And with that alignment, you're going to get a client that is going to take the degree of care that they're not going to have a loss. And they're going to work with the insurance carrier on the things that insurance carriers suggest to protect that property from being damaged in the first place. When there is a partial loss and there is a conservation or restoration, then this is where it gets interesting. What is that loss in value once it's been restored? And this is where appraisers, conservators, the insurance carrier themselves, brokers that understand how these losses work in the first place, get involved and come up with an outcome that's satisfactory to what that client's expectations are. If it's a large enough, and we're starting to get involved in collections that are 25, 50, 100 million in value and greater, you can start to get things in policies whereby if a piece is deemed to be a partial loss and its loss in value drops by 50%, the insurance company will consider it to be a total loss. That's not a daily occurrence. You're not going to get that clause on every policy, but just to give you an example of the things that can be done and have been done in the past, that's really important. Now let's take the other side of the coin, and the Palisades fire, right? Where collections were completely destroyed. Well, the insurance carrier is not just going to come and write a check either, because they're going to want to know, was everything that I believe that was in that house actually in that house? So again, you've got to prove your loss. So understanding that and working with clients, making sure that there's good video or photographs at a given point in time of what was where it's supposed to be, so that you can prove your loss more readily to the insurance carrier. And in those instances, if you have the right kind of basis evaluation, they'll write a check up to that amount, whatever they are obligated to pay.
That's a good point. Having it in having the video or the photographs and the documentation in a secondary location. We typically tell clients to keep it at their attorney's office, but you can keep it kind of any secondary location. So that if something happens,
it could be your insurance broker, it could be on the cloud in a secure file. These things are really important. Again, always thinking about, how do I prove a loss if I have it?
Yeah. So one of the reoccurring themes in these video blogs is the transfer of assets, the transfer of wealth to the next generation. And I know we've spoken about this before, you and I offline, but again, when assets are passed down, there are a couple of nuances that many people overlook. Right? There's no big, mom and dad just had the everything appraised, because they knew it's, or, you know, it's, let's say mom dies second and, you know, we're in our 90s. And so she has everything appraised and it's relatively recent and we feel like everything is up there. And now she passes away sadly and it gets transferred to the 2 adult children and 4 adult-ish grandchildren.
Yes,
There's some insurance matters that need to be addressed there as well
there
in terms of
are.
the ownership.
Well, because, you know, the question is, again, who's named on that policy? If it is mom and dad and the property now gets transferred, those individuals are going to become responsible for maintaining their own insurance going forward. Right. So now they would need to have their own policy as owners going forward and make sure that those assets are insured properly.
So making sure that that the insurance reflects the proper owner, especially when it changes. And, you know, sometimes that's via gifting, sometimes it's via inheritance, is incredibly important. You know, one of the other things that, and I know we've gone through this with an existing client here at Wellspire not too long ago, they inherited a bunch of art and acquired a bunch, but quite frankly, their home was already filled, and I don't think there was any space on any wall where you could potentially have. So they ended up putting it into storage. And it is expert storage, but nonetheless, it's storage. And I know there's some nuances and differences there as well, and things that you've shared with me that I hope you share with our audience here, that you've experienced that people need to be mindful of.
Great question. And especially if you live in, you know, in New York City and you have an apartment and your collection and your wall space in the apartment's way smaller than the size of your collection, off-site storage is a big thing. And there are many really good fine art storage companies throughout the United States in most major cities. So they've spent a lot of focus and a lot of time to make sure that the physical structure has fire suppression systems, is masonry, fire resistant construction. Their security is top notch. There's video cameras around the perimeter. There's lighting. It's fenced in. You can't get in.
Yeah, humidity control I know is a major issue.
Is a huge issue. And they have backup generators in the event the power goes out. That's where you want to be, whether you're in Houston, New York City, Boston, you know, LA, anywhere in between. There are fine art storage facilities, and typically those fine art storage facilities also have packing and shipping adjuncts, and they can pack and ship your art from your home to a museum. If you have a work of art that a museum would like to have be brought into their exhibition, you know, you want it done by a professional fine art packer shipper who knows the objects, knows what and what not to use to pack, is equally as important. And so and again, if you're not sure where to go and what resources, you know, call your fine art store, call your fine art insurance broker to better understand what's available to you in that area. It's a great question. Where a lot of losses come from: transportation, packing and shipping. A lot of oopsies. I mean, it happens because when people touch things, that's when accidents occur and losses occur. So.
Yeah. Well, this has been terrific. Any last thoughts that you want to share? I mean, I think this is incredibly valuable content for anybody who's a collector, whether it's a small collection where you're just starting out or you have a $200 million collection already, because a lot of this stuff is, oh yeah, I knew that, but we forget, right? And there's so much in life where it's, I knew that, but I haven't done it. You know?
And you know, things get in the way. Time gets in the way. Trips get in the way. Seeing grandchildren gets in the way. Talk with your broker. Invite them to come see your premises. There are a lot of things. Oh my gosh, this is skylight, and I've got a photograph, you know, underneath the skylight. It's going to fade. You know, how do you protect your own home? Is it have the right types of alarms? Are there water shutoffs, et cetera, et cetera? I'm going to be away for 3 months in the summer. Well, what do you do to make sure that you don't have any type of claim that your art could be affected? So, I mean, a lot of this is preemptive and it's relatively simple, but you're right. We just don't think about it.
Yeah, and many people have second and third homes where there's art, and that's where the focus sometimes needs to be, as opposed to the primary residence, because that's where stuff falls through the cracks.
Proximity to the ocean, all those kinds of things, right? I mean, people of means who have collections of that size also have homes in really interesting remote areas that create their own challenges. So understanding that and learning how to protect your contents and your art goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah. Well, Steve, it's so nice to speak with you. Thank you so much. Steve Pincus of Risk Strategies. Glad you were able to spend the time with us. Thank you. And I'm sure people can reach out to you, and we'll make sure to include your name and number when we post everything.
Oliver, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening or watching this video of Collecting with Confidence, Art Investment Essentials, presented by Wellspire Advisors. If you have any feedback or questions, including suggestions for future topics and guests, reach out to us directly or send us an email to clientrelations@wealthspire.com.